6:43 right now. Teenagers incarcerated in Maryland are mostly male and mostly African American. WMAR 2 News' Mark Roper continues our in-depth look into the juvenile justice system. And Mark, you talked with the head of the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services about the staggering statistics, but what's being done about those numbers?
Christian, they're working on alternatives to putting kids in juvenile detention or incarceration. The facts and figures raised in this 245-page report highlight how kids are reformed in the state, but some of the lack of stats there in this report could bring reform to the system itself. For more than 800 Maryland kids, a place like this was their home in 2018. And a recent report from the Maryland Department of Juvenile Services shows within a year of release, nearly half get arrested again.
I think a lot of them are successful. We use a very unforgiving way of evaluating success, recidivism. And if a kid, commits any small offense, after they've been with us, they count as a recidivist.
Looking back at repeat offenders for 2018, many of those who get rearrested have their charges dropped, while 20% are reconvicted. Only 15% end up reincarcerated. The rest get to avoid incarceration by wearing an ankle monitor. But there is disparity in other numbers. 19% of those kids who are incarcerated are white, while more than 72% are black.
If you're black and you're male, you're more likely to be detained, you're more likely to be incarcerated, you're more likely to be treated more harshly, and that's not fair. It shouldn't work that way. And we have a responsibility to look at our system, and everybody has a responsibility to look at every step of their systems to address this.
While the overall number of kids being placed in a state facility are down since 2016, the number of youth incarcerated for a violent crime is on the rise. And according to the Department of Juvenile Services, Secretary Sam Abed, the most common offense, second-degree assault, is one many kids might commit unwittingly.
It is normal for adolescent kids to get into conflicts and fight, and we should not be bringing them into custody. We should not be incarcerating them for doing something that's normal behavior. What we should be doing is intervening with them and showing them that this isn't the way to solve that dispute.
Most of those kids being placed by the courts into the juvenile justice system are 15, 16, 17 years old. The DJS Data Resource Guide contains 245 pages of stats and information. What it doesn't reveal is how do these kids end up later in life.
Did they finish school? Did they go, to college? Did they get married and have a family? Are they supporting that family and have a nice job? And unfortunately, that information is not available to us.
For the same reason, we can't show you the faces of incarcerated kids.
We want to protect their identities. We don't want to have, collateral consequences come in the way of their success later in life. And so they put up a lot of barriers to ensure that that doesn't happen. And we need to find a way to navigate through those so that we can find the success stories.
And DJS officials say the state is developing a program which will allow them to share information across state agencies, which they hope will make what's already a difficult time for families a little easier to navigate the system between the courts and juvenile services.
Wait, it just has to be devastating for a whole family when a young person is sent away like this. And it's interesting that you mentioned that part about what happens later, because I wonder if there's a plan to start looking into that and, not a year, 5 years, 10 years later, what happens to some of these young people?
There are several things that they do. They have people that will continue to work with people once they leave the system to make sure they stay on the right path and make sure that even after they leave the youth center, 30 days, 2 months, 3 months out, that they are still on the right path, that they're either going to school, making sure that they have a job, helping them go into college, or whatever it is, what path that they want to take. They help to make sure that they stay on the right path.
Yeah, the question is, what does long-term success look like? We'll see. Thanks very much for that report, Mark.